Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table. I'm your host, Michael Martin, and I'm here to interview top producing real estate agents, mortgage lenders, and business owners. Today, I have a very special guest, Miss Ginger Peters. Thank you so much for being here. You and I have known each other for a long time, pretty much right when you first got in the real estate business, or right thereafter anyway.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, so here we are in 2025.
15 years. Whoa.
It is crazy, right?
Yeah,
so,
in April it'll be 15 years for me.
April will be 15. Wow, that is a great milestone. That was a long time ago for me. It's crazy.
And still feels like yesterday.
It does. In some ways, it feels like yesterday. Yeah. In some ways, it feels like, holy moly, that was a million years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's chat about a couple different things. So, I think a natural question to ask someone like you, and let me just briefly describe what I know about you, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been a top producing real estate agent in the marketplace for, out of those 15 years, probably at least 10 or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've certainly been able to, and we're going to talk more about this, but you started individually. I think you were on a team originally, and then just kind of went individual, and then said, okay, I need some help, and figured that out, right?
Yeah.
And I could tell you, for me, right, as I became from an individual loan officer to building a team, I learned the hard way through, I use the word I've heard, failing forward a lot.
Yes.
I've made a lot of those mistakes in the past. I'm sure I'll continue to do some more of that in the future, but with risk and reward, that's just the way it works.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about, you and I have in common the fact that we both went to ECU.
Yes.
I happened to go a little bit before you, but so how did you get into real estate? How did this whole thing happen?
So yes, I was living in Greenville and going to ECU, and I bought a house when I was a junior there. I was working at a restaurant, purchased a home.
What restaurant were you working?
The Beef Barn.
Okay, yeah.
The Beef Barn.
It's not there anymore, is it?
No, sadly. So that's actually where I've met my best friends.
Oh, wow.
All came from there. But so working at the Beef Barn, bought a house, and I just really liked the process. And at the time, I was still kind of figuring out my major. I had gone from nursing to social work and was trying to determine what I wanted to do next, but I also knew that I had an entrepreneur spirit, so I wanted to build a business. And so when I purchased my home, I saw that could be a path to building a business. So I went into the business school, and I asked what's the most challenging one, and that was finance. And so got my finance degree literally the next week after graduation, signed up for real estate school. That was I think a 3-month process. Yeah, because I graduated in December, was licensed in April, and joined Keller Williams in Raleigh right out of the gate.
Wow.
So I knew I wanted to go to Keller Williams, and I knew I didn't want to sell in Greenville. So
interesting. So you're a junior or senior at this point?
Junior.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you said something there a minute ago that rarely do you hear people say, and I'm sure you and your team work hard at this now, but you said you loved the process. So most people, when they think about buying a home, the process is overwhelming, mm-hmm. right? It's scary. So, and you were 19 or 20 years old.
Yeah.
And loved the process of buying a house. Now, first of all, I got to ask you, how in the heck did you figure out at 19 years old that you should buy a place? Where did that even come out of your head? I don't know anybody else in college that did that.
I just knew that, I could already see the investment potential in Greenville. So I knew that, I still have that property that I bought. So I knew that if I planted my feet there and started to pay, I didn't want to pay rent, it just made sense. This was also when, no doc loans were happening.
Was this 2005?
Yeah. So it was pretty easy to get that. And yeah, I had moved from apartment to apartment, and I had moved to Arizona for a little while, and I just wanted to have stability. I wanted to have my dogs.
Where did you live in Arizona?
I lived in Yuma with my ex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, just after college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, shortly after college, and then when I purchased the home is when I was back in Greenville. because I had done 2 years online.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, I just saw like the investment. I mean, I paid $100,000 for
I was
that
going to ask, it's
house.
probably somewhere in the 100.
It was actually really funny. Not knowing anything about the process and not having an agent. Loved my agent. I found her in the phone book. I literally called. I started at the A's and I got Barbara in the B's. So Barbara was my agent. Didn't really do a consultation, explain anything. Totally fine. I didn't know I needed any money to do this. Didn't have a lot of money. So my grandma wrote the $1,000 earnest money check for me.
Wow.
And that's all I paid to get into the house.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That is wild. Is that house paid off at this point?
Yeah.
I figured it might be.
Yep.
So just out of curiosity, what's that $100,000 house worth today?
It's like $240, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 2.5x what you paid for it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 15 years ago, 16 years ago. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess 20 years ago. So
Gosh, that's crazy.
yeah. So still interesting. Like I bought a home pretty early as well. I was 23 or 24. I can't remember exactly how old, somewhere in there. And my mom was a real estate agent though, so for many, many years. And so I certainly was encouraged to buy a house, and I really, why pay rent, right? If you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, right? The average first-time home buyer today is 38. It might now be 39 years old, which is just crazy to think of.
20 years of loss.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, of that equity, right? You could have a house that's paid off for right now. Because the $100,000 home today, or then, right, is a $400,000 home today, right?
Right.
Maybe not in Greenville, but
Yeah.
but in our market for sure, right? So it's when I bought my first house, ironically, so I'd been, out of college for a few years. I was in sales. I was not in the mortgage business yet. I didn't know anything about mortgages. My best friend from high school had gotten in the mortgage business, and he actually helped me, did my loan for me.
Oh.
And he screwed it up.
Uh-oh.
And we closed like 3 days late. I still get to remind him of that, which is fun. But it didn't affect our relationship, thank goodness. But it was super stressful. I was married to my first wife at the time. She was losing her mind. I remember very much about that, but it all worked out.
Yeah.
I wasn't married very long, similar to your story there too. But buying a first house, like, it is such a big step, but at the same time, it's how people create wealth, right? Without real estate, wealth really doesn't happen. The numbers are just insane. Yeah. It's something like the average renter has a net worth of it's definitely less than $80,000. I think it's closer to like $30,000 or less.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even when you count people that are older that have 401ks and that kind of stuff. And there are people that are just be lifelong renters because they just never took that step, and then it becomes too late. Or at least they think it is. And the average, a homeowner has well over several $100,000 worth of equity or net worth, and that's just such a big difference. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you so much for watching our podcast so far. If you do me a huge favor before you forget about it, to like, subscribe, and if you would, just leave a quick comment about what you think of the podcast. And if you want to share it with your friends, I'd love that too. Thanks again so much. We'll finish up right now.
To be honest, we recently built in downtown Cary, and that's kind of our dream home, and that would never have happened until I built the rental portfolio to be able to pay for that.
Yeah.
And so, I think having that strategic plan of buying one rental a year has allowed me to move into, my next kind of phase where I don't, those rentals are paying for the primary property.
Yeah.
And so just starting with one, and then continuing to move from there, keep that, purchase something else. That was our plan as we buy.
Have you ever sold any real estate?
We sold our mountain house because that was a pain in the butt.
Got it.
But that's the only one.
But every other primary residence you've lived in, you've kept?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I wish I would have done the same. I can promise you that. I sold a house in Drury Hills maybe like 7 years ago. I made great money on it, but I think I sold it for $375, and the lot's worth like $900 now. So,
and I bought a few for my family that they got into a pickle and needed, those kind of things. So I was told when I first got into real estate, purchase a property a year.
All right. So let's go to that. What do you, as far as advice, you can certainly say what you've done, but also what would be your advice to someone who wants to buy their first house and then build a portfolio? What's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, well, I think first is just having a clear why as to like, why do you want to purchase that property? Is it because you want to build the wealth in real estate? Is it just because you want somewhere safe to lay your head? I think it starts with the why, because that's what's going to motivate you to get to the table.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we talk to a lot of clients that they heard it was a good idea to buy, or their parents said it was or wasn't, or whatever. They don't have a clear why as to their motivation to purchase. So I think it's first figure out what that is for you. And then from there, get a clear plan. For me, it was, okay, now that I've bought this first property and I've looked at, of course, that was when loans were just being handed out. But there's so many programs out there right now that can still help buyers get into their first property. So once you figure out your why, it's, well, what program is going to help me achieve this? There's a lot of not hurdles, but there's a lot of challenges in getting into your first home. And it's just like anything. If you don't have that clear motivation of why you're doing it, then you'll easily be like, oh, that was a great idea. I'm going to go forget that. That was kind of challenging. I'm going to go rent. So I think it all starts with that first why, and then build your plan moving forward from there. And mine was buy one a year. Okay. What can I do to buy one a year? I'm a couple years behind, and but that has been my focus, and that's kept me going.
Yeah, that's I think great advice. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize especially in your younger years when you're willing to move more often.
Yes.
It's a great way to take a primary residence, turn it into a rental property, and then you don't have a big down payment, and you also have a lower interest rate on the new primary residence, correct?
Yeah.
And you could do that multiple times. It's really about your intention to be able to live into the house, for at least a year or two.
Yeah.
And so
it's you kind of, and I don't want to use the word suffer, because I don't feel like we ever suffered, but you're packing up and moving a lot. So it's not the most convenient lifestyle, but you go through that period to get to your next period. And then you look back and you're like, oh, that was all worth it, because now I have 5 renters and I have this passive income. So it's just a moment. It's a season of life for us.
That is a great way to, of course, start to build a portfolio as long as you want that. Now, the other thing about that is that can also create a lot of stress, right? Because I've had up to 3 rental properties at one point in time, and it's like, and I did manage them myself because there was only a few, right? But it's always like nothing ever went wrong like in regular times. It was like on Memorial Day weekend on a Friday when I'm heading out to the beach, right? Is when fortunately I did have good people that I had locally that could get to and solve the problem. But that's certainly part of the headache. And you have to
property management company.
That's true. I think I might know somebody. So you also, that's another part of your business too, right? You have a property management company. And my understanding is you manage quite a few properties.
Yeah, I think she has about 200 right now.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, the property management piece is one thing that's going to take a little bit of the profit out, but obviously the headache is left alone.
Well,
you don't have to worry about collecting the money. You don't have to worry about dealing with the problems, which is a very, very big help. I'm going to back up a little bit now and kind of go back into, you got your real estate license in college. Why did you choose to work out of an office in Raleigh while you were in like Greenville?
So I'm from Wake Forest, so I had intentions of getting back here. And again, I didn't want to sell. I saw just the potential in Raleigh over Greenville. So again, I knew I wanted to join Keller Williams. When I managed waited tables at the restaurant, and then I moved into management at the restaurant. And when I managed the restaurant, we had a lady come in that was doing her son's rehearsal dinner. And I can't tell you her name. I don't really know anything about her, but I knew that she was in real estate and she was with Keller Williams and she was amazing and I loved her. So I was like, and it was just kind of like a culture feel that like radiated from her. So I was like, I want to be with that company. And then when I looked into, their mission, vision, values, I said that, I want to go to that company. So Googled Keller Williams Raleigh and was right up here off.
It was right up here, right?
Right here somewhere.
Right up 6th.
And joined a team. Really went in. The team leader said, you should join a team. And I said, great, that sounds awesome. And joined Michelle Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
Love her. And every day I would drive in from Greenville to be in the office from 8:30 to 5:30, really not knowing like anything about real estate. But I knew that if I didn't treat it as a career from day one, then it wouldn't last.
So,
And
were you going to school at night?
I had graduated.
Oh, you already graduated.
Yeah.
Okay, got
I
it.
graduated in December and started real
So
estate
you were
in
just
April.
living in Greenville, but
Living in
working
Greenville,
here.
working here. So I would drive here every day. And then, I would come on the weekends for showings or open houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her telling me, like, you can't do this every day. You're going to burn out. But that's what I
Too
did
bad
for months.
we didn't have podcasts to listen to on the way there and back back then. It wasn't a
I
thing.
probably had the MREA on a CD or
Yes,
something.
yeah. They did have audiobooks.
Yeah. So I was with her about 6 months when I realized I probably wasn't the best team fit.
Mm-hmm.
There's the DISC and all of these assessments now that had I taken then and, we had really looked at, we may have realized that the buyer's agent role wasn't so much for me, that I'm more of a driver. And so I let her know, I'm going to, after my 1 year, because I did sign a 1 year agreement,
Mm-hmm.
after 1 year, I'm going to, go on my own. So after that year, I went on my own. I was on my own for about a year before I hired an assistant.
Okay. Roughly what year was that?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty close to right around the time we met.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember how we met. It may have been through Michelle. It may have been through someone else in your office. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But the company at the time I was working with was Prospect Mortgage. That company doesn't, it exists, but it's in a different name at this point. In fact, it's been a couple different names. It's changed companies or changed ownerships. And that time we were very focused as a mortgage company. We were the preferred lender for a bunch of companies that manage or that had on their books all these foreclosures.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so REOs, right? And so one of our strategies was we did renovation loans because a lot of these houses had deferred maintenance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that we had access to all these different properties that were foreclosures. And you remember calling you up and be like, hey, you want to do an open house with me? And you're like, sure, because you were hustling doing your own open houses at the time. And it was a struggle, right, to find great properties, but REOs were abound. There were plenty of REOs around. And so, I had access to all these REO properties, and we would try to find the right ones that were only a few turns off of like a main intersection. And then we would work, gosh, remember, like I bought all these signs and we would have like 75 signs.
Yes, that was the smartest, like that. And the traffic was
insane.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah, like people were not doing open
pipeline
houses because they didn't know how to do them. I think a lot, and that was a really interesting tactic because what we were doing is marketing a free list of foreclosures.
Yes.
And they might be coming into that open house thinking they're going to get a sheet of paper, right? But what we were doing is sign them up for basically getting listings.
Yeah, we were building our database.
That's right. And so, and we used to HBM. I don't know if you remember that at all, but that was that software that we utilized to put these people into that system. That still exists, by the way.
Wow.
I haven't used it since that company, but Fairway actually is a big user of it. And so, it took a whole lot of hard work, right? And a lot of energy and effort. And I think the frustration that probably every agent, and certainly as a loan officer, I felt was, God, I'm going to go spend my Saturday afternoon. I had a kid at the time, a baby. Mm-hmm. And Finley was probably 2 or 3 years old at the time. And so I'm going to spend time on my Saturday afternoon, 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours doing open houses and just hope to God that we get a lead from
Right. And we wanted immediate, we wanted to go that day and get a deal.
Yes.
And we lose sight of all of that built up the business that was putting in the work to get the business
creating
going.
the database, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What have you learned as a newer agent? I know you were a big hustler, you still are, but how did you get traction? Because you came in probably some of the toughest times of the industry.
Yeah. I mean, my first year and possibly 2 years were all foreclosures and short sales. Mm-hmm. And which was a blessing in disguise for me. I didn't know any different, and I knew I had to figure it out. So what would look like a challenge to some people now is just, we just figured it out.
Yeah.
And so that I've
There wasn't much else besides that.
Yeah. So I've used that, I think, in getting started, and just everything in my real estate career is like, okay, we'll figure it out. Like it's maybe a roadblock, or it's a, the NAR stuff. Like, okay, we'll figure that out. Like, life keeps going. We just have to pivot, figure it out, keep going. And so I feel like that time period really laid the foundation for that.
That's good. I think there's too many people that take that kind of any major change that you're dealing with and get absurdly emotional about those types of things. And certainly, one of the things I know about you from knowing you as long as I have is that you're not a crazy emotional person when it comes to this stuff. It's about tactics. Mm-hmm. I know, when something goes awry on our end, it's easy, for one of my teammates to go like, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. This is going to be a major problem. I'm like, we'll figure it out. Right. It's just, you just got to keep calm head. What doesn't work is panicking. Mm-hmm. That mm-hmm. will definitely cause more problems.
And more time.
And more energy, right? All that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, we'll figure it out. Worst thing we have to do is write a check.
Right.
At
Life
some point.
Keeps going.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Excellent. So, were you, before college, were you a competitive person? I mean, I feel like you must be competitive now to be at the level you're at, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on, whether you feel like you're a competitive person or were, and where are you now in that world?
I don't think I was super competitive, but I was always a leader. So I was, running for student body president. I was leading any organizations. I was like spearheading things out of school, like outside of school. So, and there was a little bit of, I wanted to be I will say I'm not the smartest individual that's ever existed, but I'm very I wasn't like a 4.0 GPA, mm-hmm. but I was very strategic about, I understood what I needed to do to get that things done. I knew what I needed to do to get into college, and a lot of those things, because my GPA wasn't out of the roof, I was strategic about what I needed to do outside and leadership and those kind of things. Yeah. And so I guess that was a little bit of competitiveness, but more so just like striving to get to the top.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Which, I think you got to have some competitiveness in order to do that, right? Right. I know for me, I never thought of myself as competitive ever, probably because I never felt I was that good at anything. And if you're competitive, then and you're not that good, then you're just going to be faced with a whole lot of adversity. Yeah. Probably because I didn't try a whole lot either, right? Yeah. Similar to you, but maybe significantly worse. I barely got into college. I was super grateful when ECU finally let me in. And so, just to be there was amazing. Now, once I got there, I kind of got my head straight. I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And I did fairly well in college. For me, the competitive piece, I guess started, I think probably the first time I ever realized it. My mom was an agent with ERA at one point in time. I was still in college. I was 20 years old. She was going to win some national award, and it was in Nashville, Tennessee. And so she decided to take me with her. And so I'm watching this giant ERA convention, right? And they're giving out these awards. And I remember seeing this rookie of the year, who's probably like 22. And he was in Seattle, Washington, or somewhere in Washington State. Mm-hmm. And, he had sold some ungodly number. It was like $50 million or something his rookie year. Right. Whatever, right? I was going, if I'm going to sell real estate, I want to be that guy, right? Yes. I'm like, why would you do anything else, right? Yeah. And so it's not quite that easy, right? But so I thought I was going to get into real estate for a while, but decided that wasn't my way. Ended up getting into food sales. Did that because I had worked in restaurants for years too. And you worked in the restaurants. Yep. You always worked front of the house? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I always worked back of the house in all the restaurants. And in my first job in sales, I certainly became pretty competitive and not even realizing it. But I guess I got better at it. And then once you get better, then you
I can relate to that. Once I got into sales and saw the opportunity and potential, for me, the 30 under 30 became a big goal. And so then, I would say then I started to become pretty competitive as far as I wanted to achieve more than I had the year before or grow in a different way the year before. So I think it was like a more challenging competition with myself than it was, the person across.
Yeah, I
across
think
the row.
that's important for me too. I gotta beat last year's, right? And you come off of 2021, it's tough to beat that year the next
Yeah.
year. But every year after, besides that, you're trying to grow and be.
I mean, every year's not going to be a record-breaking year.
Yeah.
But did your systems grow? Did your relationships grow? It's not all like the numbers and the families that we've served. Is my foundation of my business. Am I getting more time
Stronger,
back?
yeah.
So I think there's different ways to measure that. That's really, really important. And sometimes salespeople take their eye off of that.
Yep, I think so. It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just focusing on the sale instead of the process, and that's really, really important. So, so let's talk a little bit about your team, and even on the process of growing a team.
Mm-hmm.
So you decided, it sounds like fairly quickly after being a buyer's agent on a team,
Yep.
that you were like, okay, this isn't the best thing for me. And so you became an individual agent after that. How did that experience start and go from there?
So I became an individual agent, and that 2012, I call more of my transition year, is kind of figuring that out. 2013, I believe I sold 36. And those were mostly all buyers.
In 20, was that?
That was 2013.
Okay. And so you had 3 transactions averaging a month.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
And there were maybe 2 listings in there. It was not many listings. So it was a lot of buyers, and it was a lot of time in the car and a lot of hustling. And I think that's when I realized, and I had an assistant then.
You did, okay.
And it was more of a catch-all assistant.
Like
so,
an admin type.
Yeah, I was like, here, do this, do that, do that.
Transaction
No real process or system.
Was that person
around it.
licensed?
My first one was not licensed, but I quickly learned license is
key.
Gotta have the license. So it was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, and realized when at that time I was single, I had been introduced to my now husband, and it was a Saturday, and I had 8 buyers going into the end of 2013 or beginning of 2014. I had 8 buyers on a Saturday, and they were all over the triangle. And I remember having the.
Did you take them together in one van?
Yeah,
Let's just show you all these
that would be
properties
great.
together.
I mean,
you create competition
you're
with
here
your
at 9:30, you're here at, I mean, it was just boom, 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 boom. And it was, it was like show them 2 houses, show them 1 house, show them whatever. But I was just like, this isn't going to work. And my now Alan was asking me to go on a date. And I'm like, no, number 1, no, I don't date. Number 2, I'm too busy to date. And I think I texted him at like 8:00 that night. And I said, I can meet you at 9:00 for a drink. And then it was in that moment that I realized, like, this isn't sustainable. And to be really honest, I don't even love it. Look, I am not the agent that's like, wow, I love houses, HGTV, do not watch that. Like, no. And I honestly, small talk when you're showing houses, that's not me either. So that's when I realized, okay, if I'm going to build a life by design that Keller Williams teaches us, then I have to bring in people into my world that can take over these pieces that have to be done and need to be done at a high level, but shouldn't be done by me. So then that's when I hired my first buyer's agent.
Okay. And so did you then start focusing on listings at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
I'll be really honest. When I stepped out of buyers in 2014, it kind of meshes together. But I have rarely ever worked another buyer. And if I have, it's been for crazy situations.
Sure. You just had to have
I just believe that if you're going to bring this person into your world, then I'm not going to cherry pick and say, oh, I'm going to work that one, you work that one, or this is an easy one, you get the hard one. I just believe that that's just trust.
I think a lot of people that start teams start off by doing that when they hire their first buyer's agent. And they don't realize they're also not only are they hurting the person that they've hired to do that job, but they're hurting themselves, because they can then be focused on creating, whether it's, more systems in their business, or, and working on their business, or even, prospecting, right, to get more business for the team.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's really hard, especially, as a newer team. You don't necessarily have $50,000 or $100,000 sitting in the bank that you can just manage that, because you also see the dollars that would be coming in that you'd be giving away, basically, right? But I think that's important. I'm glad you shared that because I think it is truly a better way to manage it. You've just got to be brave enough to let it go and then go get more business, for the team.
It's leverage is either you have leverage for luxury or you have leverage for leverage. And if you have leverage for luxury, then you bring someone into your world so that you can not do what you need to do. You can go watch TV, you can do whatever. It's leverage for luxury. But if you're bringing true leverage in, then you should be using them for leverage so that you can go get more people and more leverage. So I've seen people bring in, team members or whatever, and they do give them the business, but then they're not out getting more business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you remain stagnant at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting you saying that. I'm seeing a little bit of both sides of that for myself because I've got a pretty good sized team, and leads is everything I'm focused on this year. It was a big revelation for us. Not that it always hasn't been important to know your leads and know your numbers.
Yeah.
And we look at them every single month, and we have for the last several years. But what we looked at, we did a 2-day offsite. We run EOS. Do you follow me? So we run EOS. We did our 2-day offsite in January, and we looked at our volume. We missed our annual goal by 3 million, which is about 10 or 11 transactions, which, stinks.
Yeah. You could have done that.
Yes, we could have done that. And I was, there was a little burnout last year.
Yeah.
If I'm making an excuse. I know you guys say you can have excuses or results. We can't have both.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of excuses in there and some lack of results because of that, right? And so made a lot of changes at the beginning of this year to get back on track.
Nice.
But one of the things that was just so eye-opening, right, it was the number of leads that we had versus our lead goal. I think we were almost 200 short. Right. Now, fortunately, our volume was not that far off because our loan average ended up being significantly higher this year than we expected it to be. Yeah. But our unit number was obviously fairly off. And so it was like, that's just, okay, if I'm doing nothing else, I really need to do nothing but focus on leads, right? Getting more leads.
Yeah, get them in the funnel.
And so we can manage that. The team manages the leads for the most part. I help them a little bit, but that's mostly their role. Like getting more leads. And I think that's really what every team leader has to do unless you can leverage that somehow, which I think you guys do as well. So we'll talk more about that. So you built the team. What are some of the challenges and mistakes you dealt with as you've kind of gone through the process of building a team? Yeah. And again, I know you've used the word failing forward.
Yes, what definitely failing forward. So I think, again, not being really clear about what when you bring an admin into your world, my first admin, it was just kind of like, here's this, go run there, whatever. So I'd never set that person up for success, and they didn't have a clear foundation and they weren't able to grow in that role. So having a clear, and it's hard to slow down enough to get these things in order, but at least like, what are you doing that you don't enjoy and you feel like someone else should do. And once I figured that out, it was the contract to close. And then I realized I don't want to do repair negotiations. So that was a big part of it. And so that required someone to be licensed. Once I brought that person into my world, that really changed everything because I was able to that's one small piece of our team's value proposition, but it is a piece because when they put something under contract, they don't do anything until closing. And so I was starting to build the value proposition of our team by getting really clear on what I needed to attack first.
Which means you as the owner have to invest time and money to build a plan out and obviously pay these people to do this.
Correct. Yeah. And
so the buyer's agent doesn't have to do it.
Right. Take the risk of the financial training, mentoring, coaching, all of those things. So having a licensed assistant was really, it's worth the money if you want to say that, just the leverage piece. The next part of building the team that I feel like I failed forward on is in 2014 when I was named 30 under 30. It really took off. I really started to feel the incoming referrals pretty drastically, and I needed help. And at that time, I had one really strong buyer's agent who was a past client that was with me, but we needed help. And so I ended up hiring some agents from the office that kind of I don't want to say weren't succeeding in that role, but they were looking to join a team to get more leads and all of that. So
they're new agents struggling, trying to figure it out, right?
And so I didn't really vet them or do like learn about them, learn about their culture, integrity, who they were, where they showed up. Like I didn't. I was just like, come on, let's go. We're going to do it, and we did it. We sold probably. I think our best year was 175 units, and it was a great year for us. And then I learned in that I didn't continue to share the value proposition of our team. Just like I always say, like Keller Williams, we have to share the value proposition of our company in order to continue to have our associates in alignment with our company. So what is the value proposition? Where is my, cap for Keller Williams? Where is it going? What am I getting? What's the value proposition? And you have to do that for a team as well, and especially for the salespeople, because you're providing you're providing the deals, you're providing the marketing, you're providing the systems, the training, the ad, all those things that you
and people I think totally like to throw that out the way, right? And go, well, I can go to this company and get paid more to do the same thing,
100%.
But yet we're not getting all this other stuff, right? And
or I can go do it on my own, which is what in this situation happened with some agents and one of my admins. So that was very eye-opening for me, is that bringing people into what we have built, you have to be very careful about that and make sure that you're really vetting people. And it's harder as business is flying around and things are happening to really do that. But that was a big eye-opener for me. So then my next failing forward, well, I had told at that point I had 2 assistants that were still with me. Then they're still with me today. One runs our real estate team and one runs the property management team. And I virtually said, look, we really don't need to sell any more houses for the rest of the year. I think this was August. Let's not sell any more houses. Let's focus on making sure our foundation is so tight and that we have a very clear value proposition that we can communicate, that we have a system around communicating this so that this does not happen again. So that was a failing forward in the aspect that I had to stop selling houses, get my ducks in a row in order to move forward.
Which means you obviously put yourself in a financial position to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Which is you can't just leave that and be unset, not unset.
Yeah, we had to be in the financial spot.
And so you had done that already, which gave you, because otherwise most people are stressing the heck out because how are you going to make my November mortgage payment?
Right. So you live below your means.
Yes. Yeah. Very important.
Always living below your means.
Yes.
From there, that was 2017, 18.
So how did you, I'm really curious, so you had this realization, I clearly messed up because I didn't convey this. How did you put all those pieces back together and say, here's what we're doing? How did you rebuild that foundation?
So we really looked at our onboarding, how do people earn leads? How do they earn the right to do these things within our company versus this is all here. Here's this and that and all the things. Earn your right to receive these things from us. So we had to put systems around that, and we had to have a clear communication. If you go to our team now, and you put something under contract, and you're telling the team, hey, I put 123 Main Street under contract, we're saying, okay, where'd that source of business come from? My expectation is that I bring a source of business and you bring a source of business. We didn't have that before. That partnership, it was all coming from me. And so the partnership expectations weren't there. And so we just built those expectations of, we're in this together. Here's what I provide. Here's the value of our team. And here's my expectations of what you're also going to bring to the table. And so we're in more of a partnership than kind of, I don't know, just throwing stuff out. Yeah. If that makes sense.
So is there a percentage that there's an expectation for, what percentage of business they need to bring in versus what what's come from the team?
The goal is 50-50 for one and one. I will say for our new, that takes a little while to build up, and I completely understand that. But are they doing the activities to bring that business in? Are they hosting the open houses? Are they getting in communication with their sphere? Are they door knocking? Are they doing the things that would bring those. If so, then that's they're doing the activities. But if they're just straight up on the left side of the wheel, which is past clients, all the things that agent referrals, the ones that our team hands over, then we have a disconnect.
Yeah.
And so it does take a couple years to see your sphere show up and see your efforts show up, hold the open houses and get the deals. I get all of that, but you have to be working the right side of the wheel in order to be in alignment.
So and obviously you're monitoring what their activities are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think, right, it's the whole, give someone a fish or teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, when you do that, you also run the risk of them saying, all right, I know how to do this. I don't need you anymore.
Yep.
What are your thoughts around that? Because I can imagine it's always a challenge of a team. And I feel like it's a little bit different on the lending side, probably because I have maybe the problem you used to have, which is I create all the leads. If I were to create a system around bringing team, a loan officer assistants that help us get leads, then they know how to do that, and they already know the systems that we've created for 20 years.
Yeah.
How do you keep them there, or how do you set them free? But at the end of the day, like I always say, I want people here as long as they want to be here.
Right.
If you don't want to be here, I'm not going to try to keep you. It doesn't make any sense for either one of us.
No. And I've let top producers go because they weren't in alignment with our culture, or they weren't bringing what they needed to bring. But I think what I have learned is I'm not attached to the outcome like I was previously. I look at myself and say, okay, what could I have done that would be different, that they would want to be in alignment with us? But at the same time, as leaders, we're in the business of building other leaders, and it takes a leader to go run their own business, sure. Right? So if you've built someone to be a leader and you believe in them, then them stepping away to do that, yeah, it stinks and all that, but then we empower them to go do what they need to do. So I think if you're in it for the right reasons, and you stay focused on that, people are going to come and go all the time, but they're also going to stick with you if they know that you have the foundation for them. So I think it's just I'm not emotionally attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's important depending on the scope and size of your business, right? It's harder if you've got 30, 40, 50 employees, but if you're a smaller team, less than 15 or 20, as a leader, you need to know individuals, right? And you need to have a relationship with them. It's always my goal. Like, I don't ever expect anyone. Now, I've been blessed to have Nicole on my team now for over 10 years. Yeah. And it's like awesome. And I hope to God she never goes anywhere, right? But if she were to come to me and say, hey, Michael, I've just got this opportunity and there's just no way for my family that I can, pass it up. I would hope that we would have that discussion before that she's looking for something,
yeah, right.
Because of the tightness of our relationship. And we've had that happen with multiple people on the team that were like, hey, this thing's coming up and I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Because ultimately, if it's better for them, I want them to go.
Right.
Everyone's replaceable.
We can't provide that opportunity.
What kind of a leader are you?
Would you say, why would we stand in the way of that
That's
opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But also helping them look at it from all angles is, well...
Because are you thinking about this? No, I didn't think about that at all. Right?
Yeah, let's look at your lead sources. Where's the business from? How many hours are you saving a week by not doing all of these things?
Yep.
The things that, the value that a team brings that gets lost in the day-to-day.
Yeah. I want to talk I know you said, I talked beforehand a little bit about one of the things that's really important to you right now is creating standards.
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean by that and what does that look like in your business currently?
So I think this word culture is thrown around a lot. It's like, oh, this is our culture and this is the culture that we stand for. And it's hard to define what your culture is, right? But it is not hard to define what your standards are. And so most people know this about me, I don't curse. And so a standard of our team is that we do not curse. Mm-hmm. That standard builds the culture of our team because other teams in the office know we don't curse. Mm-hmm. And so the standards are what we are holding ourselves to. So I believe you should have standards for yourself. What are your business standards? Mm-hmm. What are the standards in your role? So as leading this company, here's the standards that I live by and you can expect from me. And if I don't live up to these, then you can bring that to my attention. The standards today we went over the standards of our leadership team, the standards of the associates in our office. How do they need to show up in order to be in business with us? So the standards, I think, are going to do the heavy lifting when something goes sideways. And so, like, for the standard of we don't curse. Well, if I have an agent that's cursing, it's not me going to that agent and saying, hey, watch your mouth. It's, this isn't in alignment with our standards, so how can we improve on this?
Mm-hmm.
It just does the heavy lifting, and it's no longer a personal thing. But it's, if you want to partner with us, this is what we live by.
Sure.
And I want you to do the same. If I'm not living up to the standards that I have said I'm going to do, then you have full right and responsibility to point it out to me. But I just think without standards, your culture is, it's just a word on the wall.
It's really interesting. I found, in coaching that, I was involved in the core for many, many years. And, Rick used to talk about this all the time. He's like, you guys take this as a suggestion. This is not a suggestion. This is a requirement. Like, you do this or you don't, right? And if you don't, then this is not the place where you are. But it is important as a leader, right, that you set those standards up front, that you hold everyone accountable to the same standards, right? Otherwise, it's a weak culture, because
if you're not, then you're a bystander.
That's right.
And so you're just watching it, and this is all learning leadership lessons for me. Is it's easier to not confront someone about something. It's easier to be the bystander and just, okay, well, they're going to fix that tomorrow and we'll move on. But when you have the standards and you're implementing the standards, then it's it's just an easier conversation of this one, my team knows, or the office team knows, we don't use the back door. We're leaders. Yeah, the back door's the back door, but we have a front door.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a leader of this office, you're entering and exiting from the front door. Simple request, and that's how we're going to do it. So if someone's coming in the back door, I'm going to be like, hey, we're leaders. We go through the front door. So it just does the heavy lifting.
Yeah, you have to be very brave, though, to be frank with you, to be willing to set those standards, because you're going to lose somebody. But at the end of the day, while that seems harsh sometimes, at the end of the day, they're doing you and them a favor, because they're not in line too. We have our core values on our team, right? And we hire around our core values. One of our core values is have fun, right? Mm-hmm. And so we always say, like, if you're kind of the person when we're interviewing, like, that wants to come in, do your work, get out, like, this is not going to be a fun team for you. In fact, it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, we do events outside of the office.
Right.
We do all these different things,
we
right?
want to hang out with each other. We like each other.
Right.
Like, that's part of life, is having fun.
And we have hired people that is not the right fit for them. And they're like, what do we have to do that for? I'm like, well, because this is what we said we are. But until we really kind of got truly understood and believed, like, in what our core value, I always say, we discovered or uncovered our core values, because core values are not who you want to be. It's who you are.
Right.
And so as a collective group, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you realize, okay, there's somebody in the group that doesn't really hold to these core values. Either they have to agree that is where they want to be,
right,
or they have to be, this is not the place for them to be.
And again, go back, the standards do the heavy lifting. So if someone doesn't want to be a part of those standards, it's actually doing us a favor, because we don't have to have
tough conversations.
Yeah. It's just, it is or it isn't. And if, like, one of ours is, it's no gossip and negativity. So, like, if that's happening, then, and that's where you fall, then you're not in alignment. So,
one of our other core values is positive energy.
Positive energy,
right.
Yes.
We do not have time
Which
for anything
seems so, it's some of these things you're always like, why do I have to, like, say this? And you do.
Well,
you do.
If you've been in business long enough, you know that stuff's going to be around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. I really appreciate that. I'm going to probably pick your brain more about your standards. Is there a book or anything in particular you got this thing from, or is it just you've realized over time this is kind of the way it needs to be?
Yeah, I've realized, stepping into my new role in our market center.
That's right. Now, I forgot to mention that. So you're also the OP, right?
Yes.
The operating principal of the Keller Williams Preferred office, right?
Yes.
Preferred. And you've been in that role for about a year now?
Yeah, like 8 months.
Okay.
And so I really treated the past 8 months of figuring out what I needed to figure out, and also being a bystander and seeing where the gaps were. And just going back to the culture of Keller williams. And I realized that there's been a couple years where we've just kind of done what we wanted, and there weren't standards.
And
they just, and so that stuck out to me. I have some podcasts around business standards I can share. But it just became a revelation that we can't have this culture that we want, and we can't put a sign on the door here's our vision and our mission and our values without holding ourselves to a certain standard.
Yeah.
And being able to not lose an associate, but like being able to put the standards ahead of any decisions that we're making, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to
journey
learn
I've
there.
been on.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot that's very powerful, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to just mention or discuss? We're in interesting times here in this market right now.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly challenging for everyone, and probably will continue to be that way for the next.
Is it challenging or is it just a market?
I could tell you it's challenging, but it's certainly it is a market, but it's definitely challenging too. I just heard did you go to Family Reunion?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Mm-hmm. So obviously I wasn't there this year, although I've been many times before. Yeah. I read some articles that talked about how Gary Keller was basically saying the easy deals are done. Like you've got to basically be prepared to deal with tough deals and keep them together because fallout's happening more often than it has since 2017, or I can't remember what the number was, but and so anything in particular you have, like how you guys or how you're leading and navigating through this market?
Yeah, well, I think we have to treat it as like, what if this was the only market we've ever known? Just like it was when we got in and we were doing the foreclosure and short sales. What if this was the only market? So we didn't know about an easy deal. We just knew that this is how the business ran. Like, would we look at it differently then? And so it goes back to we can't wait for the easy deals. Because if this is the only market we know, then the easy deals aren't coming. Mm-hmm. So it's what activities am I doing? It's all back to the basics. I mean, I tell our team there's how many sides are in the triangle that are going to be done this year, right? And you tell me your goal is 24 of those. Okay, like that sounds, when you say it out loud, it sounds kind of silly.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's easy, not simple. So how are we going to figure out exactly what to do? And someone says 24 deals, then we're saying, where are those coming from? 6 from open houses. Okay. For every 4 open houses you get for 4 you do, you close a deal. So if you want 6, you need to have 24 on your calendar. So it's just getting really strategic about where they expect that business to come from. And then what are they doing to make that happen?
Yeah.
And it's all basics. It's getting on the phone, meeting people, being at an open house. Because if you're, we've had agents recently that have done like 50 open houses in 60 days or something, huge numbers. And it's on Friday morning, she's in an open house because she could either be at the open house or she could be at the office. And no one's coming to the office.
No, nobody's knocking on
But someone may come. And they do to the open house. And maybe they're not going to buy today, but that's a pipeline for later. And so showing up to places to build your business. So
someone that's doing 50 open houses in 60 days, you're clearly not all doing them on the weekends from 10 to 4 or whatever. So Friday morning, I wouldn't even thought about it. Is that like a broker open or is it just an open house?
It's just an open house.
Wow.
Yeah, and she signs... you may do 4 and only sign 1 person. Okay, cool. But that one person was an $800,000 cash buyer.
Sure. Yeah.
So but we can say, oh, she was at the right place at the right time. Yeah, but also she was at the right place.
Yeah, most importantly, she was doing the effort.
Right.
Yeah.
She could have been there. She could have been at home working from her computer, or she could have been at the office. And she was at the right place at the right time because she was putting in the effort. And so it's getting back to those basics of like, this is a job. If we want to make money at our job, we have to work and we have to, we can't just wait for the easy ones to come, which I'm thankful, again, that we went through that market where we knew it wasn't going to come. So we have to make it happen. And so now we just make it happen.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you again so much for taking the time here today. I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot for folks that are listening to learn from. And again, it's been great knowing you for all these years and excited to see you continue to grow and do better. I am really excited to see what happens with your office. I think the standards that you're creating in that Keller Williams Preferred office are going to create some really amazing things. So,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excited.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to Beyond the Closing Table. Really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And if you wouldn't mind, please be sure and like and comment and subscribe. We'd love for you to share this out there on social media. Feel free to forward and email it or text it to your friends. And we certainly look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much.